Welcome to another edition of the MTOM podcast. I'm Paul Yeager. This one is another one of our special video editions. So if you're listening to it on audio, I highly suggest going to our YouTube channel to watch what we're about to do. Today we're talking with Shelby Smith, and the shirt says it all, Gym and Eat Crickets. Jiminy at Crickets. It's something that you've seen on Iowa PBS before from the Greetings from Iowa. But Shelby, that's a great story, by the way, right? Tyler, you're supposed to say he did a good job.
He did a fantastic job.
He boiled down your life into 5 minutes, and we're going to pull that out just a little bit because I was fascinated from the moment I first read about what you're up to. First, a high school basketball player who goes to play college in Iowa always gets my attention with my work here with the Iowa Girls High School Athletic Union. You played basketball. Was that something, granted, the WNBA was starting when you were in high school? Is that about right?
No, I mean,
it had been going
been going probably for 10 years at that point.
So did you have WNBA dreams?
I never had WNBA dreams, if I'm real honest. I think especially in female sports, those who go to college, we don't always have that carrot of the big contract at the end. So I was never like, yes, I want to go be a professional basketball player. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but like that wasn't really my end goal.
Yeah.
So.
But basketball was a means to get to the next step. So you play in college in Pennsylvania, is that
yes.
right? St. Joseph's?
Yep, Philadelphia. So St. Joe's, part of the Big Five. I was on a jet plane out of Iowa as fast as I could in high school, but everything comes back around, it seems.
So you're a senior, you're like, okay, I graduate, I go in June or whatever. Sometimes those colleges, they have you come right away. Did you think at that moment you were ever going to come back other than to visit?
No, I was actually, I still tell the story of my high school AP calculus teacher my senior year, and I told him, I'm leaving Iowa and I'm never coming back. And, he was near retirement and he'd been teaching for many years. And I still remember him leaning back in his chair and laughing at me and saying, you'll be back. You just wait. You'll be back. So at that point, no. Again, I didn't know where I was going to end up. I didn't know if it would ultimately be Philly or somewhere else on the East Coast. But Iowa and coming back to Iowa was not on the plan.
Basketball was job one.
Mm-hmm.
What was the major at that point that you were?
So freshman year, the major was actually psychology with a pre-med track. I at that point kind of wanted to go to medical school. Wasn't super sure about it. Didn't want to have a full science major like a biology or a chemistry or something like that because I knew that the lab demands were going to be really high. So to be able to balance that as a student athlete, I could have done it, but it was going to make my life a lot harder. So I was just going to get the prereq stuff that I needed to get in to have the MCATs and all of that. About 3 semesters into that, I was looking around at all my other psychology major, compadres and going, I don't want to go to grad school for psychology, so maybe I'll go do something different. And at that point, I didn't really want to be a doctor anymore. So I walked into the academic advisor and said, we're a business school. What should I do? And they said, well, don't do marketing or marketing or management because we think that'll be too easy for you. So finance or accounting. And so the joke is always, I felt like I had too much personality to be an accountant, so I chose finance.
I'm married to an accountant, and that was the joke in the beginning. Was
Yeah.
I was like, what are you doing with all your personality?
Exactly.
That was clearly, I know the exact commentary. So finance, are you thinking, I'm going to go work Wall Street? Because you're darn close. That's in the Eastern Corridor, that's what a lot of people are aiming for.
Yeah, again, it was not, I didn't go into finance with a preconceived notion of, I will go get a job in finance. It was just, I wanted the business background. We were known as a business school. So again, it was just something to do, a path to go after. And I ended up, so I had a very strong high school academic experience. So I had a bunch of AP credits going in. So I was really far ahead. So I actually was on track to graduate in under 3 years from St. Joe's. So it became, on my 4th year, do I go after a master's degree, start a master's degree then, or do I pick up a double major? So I picked up a double major. So I actually double majored in finance and financial planning, but your wife would appreciate this. I had an 8:30 a.m. introduction to tax course. Second semester senior year. That is my one course standing between me and a double major in finance and financial planning. So I went after the financial planning major as the second one, kind of thinking maybe I'd go into some sort of, wealth management afterwards. And then my senior year, again, I got on another wild hair and had an academic advisor tell me that I should go get my law degree and my MBA at the same time after I graduated, so that way I could walk in anywhere and they couldn't tell me that I didn't have some sort of qualification for whatever I would want to do. So I took my LSATs second semester, and that same tax professor, when I was walking in to tell him that I was dropping his course, said, "Don't go to law school unless you want to be a lawyer." So at that time as well, I had this Ireland adventure fall in my lap as an opportunity, where I could go start my MBA, if you will, but it was just a master's program. That was meant, it would be a 1-year program. So I would be able to stay on track of my 4 years of getting my MBA and my law degree. I would just do the MBA portion first, and then I could come back and go to law school.
Before you jump across the pond, I want to know, so you're getting all this advice about finance. Still, is Iowa and rural life the farthest thing from your mind?
The furthest.
Still at that time?
Absolutely.
Okay.
There was no plans to come back to Iowa. Maybe to come back to the Midwest, surely for some of the better law schools. I think Washington down in St. Louis came up as one of the top law schools that would be in the Midwest. So that was the only thing on the radar of even returning to the region kind of thing. So yeah, definitely not on the mind at all.
Okay. All right. So then you have this opportunity. Is it basketball first and academics second, or how did that?
Honestly, the basketball portion of the Sport Changes Life, the Ireland opportunity, was almost the deal breaker. When I was done playing college basketball, I was done playing basketball. I was over it. I was sick of it. And so playing after was kind of one of those things I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. So, but it was a 3-part program. So it was part education, part continue playing, and then part service. So we coached in underprivileged areas in Dublin. I got a master's degree from Trinity College in Dublin as well, and then got to continue playing. And lo and behold, I found my love of basketball again through my team and the struggles. I think we were 1 in 12 or something like that. I was on a team that hadn't won in 2 years. They'd just been bumped up to a higher level, very young team, but it felt like we were just about to turn the corner. So I just fell in love with my team and was only supposed to be there for a year. Decided to stick around and ended up there for almost 5 years. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So at the end of that 5 years, what's going through your mind?
Well, so to get to the end of that 5 years, after the first year, I want to stick around. I want to play. Have a brand new master's degree from Trinity College in Dublin. Probably should do something with it. Master's in finance again, but still my head's not in, I can do all of these things with finance. I got an email from the head of our department, of our finance department, saying there's a Canadian bank that is interviewing for a risk position on a trading desk. I was like, oh, that sounds kind of cool. Like, I'll hit them up and see if I can get an interview. Brought me in for an interview and said, do you know what we do? And I said, nope. And they said, you're hired. I said, okay. So I walked in the door of the National Bank of Canada, had just opened a brand new trading desk. I was the 7th employee, and we had about $30 million in trades on the books at the time.
And you're sitting where?
In Dublin.
In Dublin.
Yes,
okay.
This is in Dublin.
All right.
So this is meant to be their European hub. So fast forward that about 6 months, they moved me to trading. So I became a trader in 6 months. And then, we grew very, very fast in the next 3 years. But as I started to look around at the people around me and the people above me, I was kind of looking at them going, I don't really want to be when I grow up. So I think I'm going to go. And I guess I'll go back home because I don't have any other plan. So at that point, that's when, the farm started calling me, if you will, because I just didn't know what I was going to do.
It wasn't so much maybe that the farm was calling. You just knew what I had been doing for 5, 6, 7 years isn't what I want to do. Right.
So it was only about 3 years at that point. But yeah, I was very certain as I was moving on. Like I just didn't want to be a trader. Like it's not like they show in the movies. Some aspects are, but most of it's not. It just wasn't for me. Again, like I have a bunch of finance degrees, but it's not necessarily for my interest in finance. It's just that I like business. So business is very interesting to me, and finance is the fundamentals of business if you really look at it. So yeah, it wasn't necessarily the farm that was pulling me back. It was more of really figuring out what I didn't want to do.
Yeah. So you call your dad, and he says, come on back. Did you have a big enough operation to absorb an extra person?
Yeah, we did. And, well, if you really back up, the person to come back and really take over the farm would be my brother. He's a little busy, though. He's an F-16 pilot in the Air Force, so got his hands tied.
It's a little bit busy.
A little bit.
And that also doesn't sound like someone preparing for a life of agriculture.
Right, no. So he's not. He went to the Air Force Academy for college, was on the competitive flying team, went straight out of there into, pilot training, got an F-16 slot, has, been stationed all over the world, deployed, all of that. But he absolutely would be the one to make sense to come back because he's the one growing up that, he's been driving the tractor since he was 5 years old. I, on the other hand, wanted nothing to do with the tractors, and I would go ride with my dad, and 10 minutes later, he'd call my mom and say, come get her. So, I wanted nothing to do with it. I was always playing sports, but the opportunity was there, and, my dad said, we can teach you how to do this. Don't worry. You'll pick it up. Not a big deal. So I booked my flight home, handed in my notice, had 1 month where you have to give 1 month notice in Ireland. So I had a month later, flew back to Iowa just in time for harvest. It was October 1st of 2017. And with layovers and everything, I'd been traveling for about 26 hours. It was 9 o'clock at night. It was dark. My dad, let's go move corn. Okay. Cool. So hit the ground running. I said, well, I don't know how to drive the tractor. He said, it's fine. I'll teach you. So, learned how to drive the tractor that night. And then I think the next day was the first day he threw me in the grain cart.
And that didn't go well?
It went okay. The guy who was working for us at the time, some of the things that I did, he said, I'm really glad that you're the one who's doing it because you're his daughter and he can't stay mad at you. So, yeah, let's just say that there were some bumps in the road, but survived, got through it, spilled corn obviously everywhere, but, shovels work well, and made it through harvest. And then, we started having conversations of what does the future look like? Do I stay on doing this, continue learning, and go into the more traditional, conventional side with corn and soybean operation? Or, does something niche come up? I actually think the spark for the whole conversation was a gift basket we got full of maple syrup. He looked at it and he said, you need to find something like this, something that's niche, something that, not everybody's going to go after. So you don't have to fight these same markets that I have for over 30 years. So that's where, the seed got planted. And then a couple months later, little did he know what was going to land in his lap.
Had you spent much in your finance training about niches and markets and trying to find something?
No. Not really.
Okay.
My favorite class in my master's course, my two favorite classes were behavioral finance, because I find, again, it's this psychology marrying with finance, so I suppose that background. But by far my favorite class was venture capital. So startups, investing in startups, seeing new businesses, all that kind of stuff. So if I really look back, that makes a lot of sense now. But no, in terms of assessing new niche markets and all of that, not a whole lot of experience there. So the original idea actually came from a podcast. Believe it or not. So I've been listening to podcasts since 2015, so fairly early. And eating bugs came up in 3 different podcasts in the same month.
And so the lights going off.
The lights, the radar's at least on.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Because you're thinking, why do you think that stuck with you? Because not necessarily geography, but space-wise. You've got room in the house. You can do this.
Well, I would never recommend raising crickets in the house. You wouldn't raise a cow in the house, so why would you raise crickets? I get asked that question quite often. But no, I think it was just the opportunity of the market and the way people were talking about it, of places all around the world are eating bugs. We're not, but it seems like we're starting to, but there's not enough bugs to go around to all of these places. So, it's a supply and demand, fundamental supply and demand equation that just kind of sparked the interest. And then it was really, really cold that winter. And I had not been in an Iowa winter for, 5 years, or even a Philadelphia winter for 5 years. So I was, huddled inside going, why did I move back here? And I found an article about a woman raising crickets for human consumption. And I said, oh, I think I could probably do that, and sent it to both my parents. And, luckily neither of them were like, no. They just said, do some research. We've heard of weirder things going.
Yeah.
And let us know what you come up with.
So who's the first bank? Is it First Bank of Dad, or were you able to talk the First State Bank of your community to help you out?
So it was First Bank of Mom and Dad, I suppose. My original startup costs were not very high. So I got this idea, sent this article to my parents on the 1st of January of 2018. Super easy date for me to remember. 10 days later, I bought my first 10,000 crickets ready to go, because I had decided that, the research I was doing, nobody was really giving me a straight answer about how to raise these things or what the market really looked like. So I said, you know what, I'll figure it out as I go. Well, the best way to learn is to do it. Mm-hmm. So I bought 10,000 10-day to 2-week-old crickets was the description. No idea what those were going to look like when they showed up, size-wise or anything. But I think with shipping, that cost me $140.
Okay.
And then I housed those in 2 18-gallon storage totes that I bought on sale at Tyson's on a New Year's sale.
I was going to say, that's a typical January sale item.
Exactly, and it was perfect.
Exactly.
Perfect timing. And then I think my next most expensive thing was a wire shelf that I bought at Sam's Club for $89. So in terms of startup costs, not very high. And then conveniently, my dad had, which is featured on Tyler's Greetings from Iowa segment, was where I originally started raising my crickets, was in the break room of my dad's shop, because it had been originally double insulated for noise. If you need to take a call or something, you step in the break room, take the call. Crickets you need to keep warm, so double insulation is ideal. So it worked out.
And frankly, the noise.
Yeah.
Too.
Although, the noise isn't really that bad. Think of it more like a white noise. People pay a lot of really good money for white noise like that to help them sleep.
Some put this podcast on as white noise. It helps them fall asleep. Yeah, that works
kind
out.
of like the equivalent of bedtime reading sort of deal.
Mm-hmm. I'd put more people to sleep than warm milk. So
Fair enough.
So you've got this operation. It doesn't take long. And what's that first step of, what am I going to do now?
Yeah. So my original plan was to sell to these companies that I was reading about that needed crickets. They just couldn't keep enough crickets in stock to be able to really scale their businesses the way they wanted. I tried to cold call a lot of them and wasn't getting a super warm response from any of them. So eventually I just said, you know what? Forget you guys. Like, I'm going to go figure it out myself. Like, I can make things that taste good. I'm a pretty good cook. So then, at that point, figuring out, how do I cook crickets? Have you ever cooked crickets?
No, I haven't.
Yep. So
not even pumpkin seeds. I think that's about the last thing that I've cooked that's not the traditional meat and potatoes.
Well, and this wouldn't be too far removed from cooking pumpkin seeds, so you'd be in luck. I think you'd be all right. You'd be a natural.
All right.
And so I had to figure that out. And then it was really test the market. Like, what kind of market do I have here in Iowa? What's the lowest cost but highest eyes that I can get on it? Farmers markets were a great avenue for that. So I applied to the Ames Farmers Market that January, like not long after I had gotten my first crickets, and said, hey, like, can I come sell crickets at your market? And the director, bless her heart, came back to me and said, that's weird, but you're in. I said, okay.
And are these live crickets?
No. Okay. So they would all be dead. That was actually one of her first questions,
when you
too.
said crickets, I didn't. Yeah, sorry.
No, that's okay. Common thought process. That's exactly what she said. She said, so are you going to sell live ones? Or, and I said, no, they'll all be dead. They'll all be prepared, completely, shelf stable, non-hazardous. And, so at that point, I had to figure out, flavors, recipes, all of that stuff. So I spent the next couple months, because May was when farmers market season started. Mm-hmm. So I got to experiment in the kitchen with how to do all of those things.
So if it's May, you're also supposed to probably be out in the field then, too.
Yeah, but luckily I was given a reprieve from all of those duties. As the everything picked up with crickets. My dad just kind of said, we'll get this handled. Don't worry. That's one of the advantages of living in Ames as well, is we have an egg college that has, yearly amounts of seasonal labor of old farm kids that are there, that we can hire. It is one thing that we definitely don't take for granted. So he could get labor if he needed, unskilled labor as I was. So it worked out. So no, at that point I was, both feet in the fire on the crickets and just seeing what I could do in that first year. And, the people that I had talked to about market research and stuff said, well, we think you should, if you were in a more diverse area, with a higher immigrant population or something like that, like, we think you'll have a better chance. And I said, well, I'm going to try it here, because I think if I can make it go here, I can probably make it go anywhere. We're meat and potatoes people. If I can get meat and potatoes people to eat crickets, I think we're on to something. And much to my surprise, 2018, every single cricket I raised, I sold out of. So every single cricket that came out of that break room was consumed.
How many do you think that was?
Oh, gosh, I don't know.
I mean, are we talking
millions?
Millions.
Yeah,
okay, not
millions.
like 50,000. Millions.
Nope, would have been in the millions. One day I'm going to have a T-shirt that says "Millions and Millions Served" on the back.
Just don't put an M on it.
Yes,
you'll be fine.
Yes,
Yeah.
Exactly.
So you sell the first million, and then what?
Well, and then at that point, with a food business, it's a volume business. So you need to be able to really push volume in order to be able to make any sort of viable business down the road. I was cooking these crickets out of my mother's kitchen. So I always say my parents love me very much. So I was cooking them out of my mother's kitchen. So I didn't have a licensed facility or anything like that. So I was still only restricted to only selling at farmers markets in Iowa. I couldn't sell on, retail shelves like a grocery store. I couldn't sell online despite, having gotten demand in other states and that kind of thing. So at that point, it was trying to figure out a path to get to a licensed facility and do all of that. But, in my current space that I was growing in, I was selling out at farmers markets. Why would I go through the expenditure, the exercise of everything of getting a production facility if I can't even keep up with demand as it is? So I needed to figure out how to raise more crickets. At that point, my dad kind of wanted a shot back too. So
Funny how that works.
Yeah, I know.
This was your idea, Dad. I don't know.
Yeah, what you encouraged it. No. So he kind of wanted that back, and I needed a bigger space. So we began, trying to decide, do we put a building up that we can raise the crickets in? I'm only a year into this at this point. I would love to say that I have all of the secrets of cricket raising after a year. I still didn't really have a good feel totally of what processes I liked. Like, everything wasn't refined. So what we ended up landing on was taking an old junker single wide mobile home trailer that was going to go to the landfill. And I rescued it, and we basically stripped it down to its frame and then built a very well insulated Morton building on wheels on top. I call it my cricket castle. So that would 5x my production.
Okay.
So now, rather than having, 250,000 crickets every 54 days, I would have 2 million every 54 days in 650 square feet. Going to solve all my production problems. I'll be off to the races. I'll be ready to get a licensed, commercial facility. I spent last August sold out again because I just didn't have enough crickets.
So you're running into the same problem that all the people, when you did the research,
Yes.
were running into, that they couldn't keep enough crickets
Correct.
in the pipeline.
Exactly. But all of that being said, some of those companies have gone to importing their crickets from Thailand and Southeast Asia and doing things like that. That wasn't something I ever wanted to do. I want these to be U.S. grown crickets. Preferably Iowa grown crickets. I just think there's quality control and all of that it's much better for me, for my quality of product, for me to know where they're coming from, be able to walk into the facilities where they're being raised, et cetera, et cetera. So at that point, it was a decision of, do we put up a bigger building and do I hire labor to do chores every day? Or do I explore a more traditional route of contract growing? Not unlike, swine, poultry, all of those things that are done here in Iowa that people are quite familiar with. And so I went with the contract growing model. So at that point, I had to find growers, to, you know, people who believed in what I was doing enough to take the leap with me and raise crickets. I actually had a couple of them just kind of fall in my lap. My first 2 growers, the first one was coming down to visit my dad to check out one of his implements, a strip till machine that we have. Had no idea about the crickets. And at that point, you know, my dad brings everybody in to see the crickets.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Let me show you something you've never seen, kind of thing. And Andy walked in and was like, wow, this is really interesting. About a week later, I got another call, and he brought down his wife and his kids and came and checked it out. And, you know, he just said, when you're ready for this, like, we want to raise crickets for you. I was like, okay, like, cool. You know, give me 6 months, whatever, to figure things out. And then my second grower was a fellow vendor at the Iowa City Farmers Market. They do sweet corn and asparagus. And I was vending at the Iowa City Farmers Market, and he came around and stopped and said, I've been reading about you. I'm really interested. Can I raise crickets for you? Like, I hadn't even brought this up, and I was like, yeah, like, you know, maybe we'll see what happens. Not 10 minutes later, you know, he goes back, and his wife comes over and says, my husband's really excited to meet you, like, really wants to raise crickets for you. I was like, these people can't be serious. And then I was doing a ribbon cutting with the Ames Chamber of Commerce that June on my cricket castle, because it was full of crickets now, finally, and just wanted to do a little unveiling. And they drove the 2 hours over from near Iowa City to come check out the cricket castle. I was like, oh, these people are serious. Like, they do want to do this. And so, you know, that was how my first 2 came on board. And so Frank and Brenda, the ones out by Iowa City, got their first crickets the day after Christmas. So they
in 2018?
2019.
Or in 2019.
Yeah, 2019.
Okay,
so we are a month in. We are fresh.
Yeah, this is news.
Yes. So we are a month in. They're getting their first eggs and having their first baby crickets in the next couple of days. And then Andy and his wife, Tyler, up by Jewel, are my second growers, and they got their crickets 10 days after the Millers did out east. So those 2 are up and running. And then I have a third coming online in Boone next month, probably 2-3 weeks. They're still constructing their enclosure in their warehouse. And then this past weekend, I had another couple visit, and then I have another one coming this weekend. So
do you have that much need for all of those people and what they could grow?
Believe it or not, I do. So I got licensed, my food processing facility, which is in Collins, Iowa, teeny tiny town, you know, 500 people. I bought a building there that was originally a hair salon, and then it was a funeral home, and then it was part of the wellness facility. Then it was a photography studio, and now obviously it is a
tell you, that building's got a lot to tell.
It does.
A lot of stories.
It does. So it is now my cricket processing facility, and I am licensed as a food processor through the state of Iowa as of the day after Thanksgiving in 2019. So at that point, then I can sell online and be on retail shelves, so like Hy-Vees, you know, local grocery stores, all that kind of stuff. So I launched my online store in December. Since then, I've shipped crickets to 25 states. So my volume on that side has picked up. All of that being said, I'm still basically the sole provider of my crickets until my growers really get on board and, you know, expand their population to be able to really move the needle. So for me to go after the big wholesale contracts, all of that, I'm on the shelves of 2 smaller grocery stores, but I can't go after, you know, the larger contracts until I have more crickets.
Sure.
So,
again, back to that initial problem that
yes.
you read about.
Yep.
So when people come up to you and say, I heard your story, I know about your story, are you writing any of this down? Or are people researching like stories like what Tyler did, or stories that appear in the Ames Tribune or whatever? Or have you been able to write papers that people can use, or
yeah, so
something else?
It's a combination of everything. You know, the stories like Tyler's story, that has reached so many people. I wrote a note to Tyler not very long ago and said, I have people come up to me at farmers markets all the time and be like, are you the girl that I saw on Iowa Public Television? And I'm like, yes. And for whatever reason, they always confuse Greetings from Iowa with Iowa Ingredient, which is fair.
Yeah.
But yes, I am. They're
Well,
like,
one of the people helping us in this video today knows that show, and now he's already halfway down the road for a story with you.
There you go.
Okay, sorry. Continue.
But yeah, so it has been that, and then additionally, so I have just recently become an admin on there's an Instagram account called Women in Ag, and it's all about just, highlighting different women all across agriculture from all around the world. And I did a takeover on their account, 3 weeks ago, maybe. So I got to write some of that story and just reach an entirely new audience. And now I get to do that once a month as one of their admins, which has been pretty cool. So there's been opportunities like that where I get to tell the story and drum up interest that way. But definitely the stuff like Tyler did, the articles in Successful Farming, Farm Show Magazine, like all of those have been very beneficial as well, of just getting the name and the idea out there. I say anything with a new market, it's like the more times you can get in front of people's face and say, hey, this is a thing, the more they'll start to believe, oh, maybe that's a thing. So that's always been the goal.
And the gym part, let's explain that a little bit. Is that a tie back to basketball or just overall?
I was going a little more for the pun of Jiminy,
Okay.
But trying to be a little different enough that I don't have Disney lawyers knocking on my door kind of deal.
Right.
But there is an element of that too, because, crickets are so high in protein. That's always been something that's been important to me. Even after basketball, I did a bodybuilding competition. I got into obstacle course racing. Not just any obstacle course racing, but like the 24-hour plus obstacle course racing, because it's not in my nature to do anything halfway.
I was going to say the same thing.
Yes. So I did that. And then after that, I kind of stopped doing that once I moved back to Iowa. And then I got into powerlifting. So I did a couple powerlifting meets. Anyways, being active and, making sure that I'm keeping track of what I'm eating and having really high quality foods has been important. So that's where the gym comes in. I also always get asked, is there a gym associated with you guys?
Well, sounds like a franchise opportunity.
I was going to say maybe one day we'll talk
the way
about
your
it.
mind works, I think it could.
Yeah.
All right. I want to get the last time I saw you, it was briefly, you walked through the hall. You were here with the Iowa Farm Bureau and yet another organization that you've kind of gotten involved with.
Yeah, so the Iowa Farm Bureau this year did a program for younger farmers, millennials, I believe was the title of it. So if you were between 18 and 35 during the time of the competition, they had a Dream Big Grow Here grant, where the initial step was to submit a video, talking about what we did as part of ag. And they were specifically niche ag, so smaller, operations, that kind of thing. So we submitted a 5-minute video on YouTube, and then that went to a committee that narrowed it down to 10 finalists. And those 10 finalists went to a public voting portion, and if you made the top 6, then you made it to the stage of the Iowa Farm Bureau Young Farmer Conference, where you got the opportunity to give a 5-minute pitch in front of everybody, and at a chance for a cash prize. So that was what I did not too long ago, and that was, how I came through these hallways. One of the tours that they brought us on was a taping of Market to Market, which was pretty cool. And so I got to give a 5-minute pitch over lunch on the second day, and there were 3 judges in the audience that we didn't know where they were, which was kind of weird. And then everybody was allowed to vote for their favorite. On the app, there was like 10-minute public voting, and then it was a combination of the audience and the judges to find out who won, and they awarded me the winner. So
you win, cash prize, and it goes, I assume, back into the business?
It does. It goes straight back into the business. That was after I won, somebody was like, are you going to treat yourself with something? I was like, yeah, I'm going to treat myself with some new dehydrators and, some nutrition testing, like some of these things that have been on the docket that I want to put cash towards. It's just nice to have that little cushion to be able to do it with. So yeah, it'll go straight back into the business as I bring the growers on. And as I get to go after these grocery store contracts and that kind of stuff, it's things that you don't think about, like printed packaging, like, graphic design things. Up until now, like I've designed all of my own labels and all of that stuff. It's time for a professional to step in for sure. So
I think we've danced around it long enough here, Shelby. I think it's time you have brought something that we need to try, and I've been trying to ask you a whole bunch of questions to put this off, because I know that's part of the whole bit is people have an apprehension for, if I wouldn't know what you're about to give me, I wouldn't probably think twice. I would just be trusting. It's the Midwest way, the farm way. I just trust what you're going to do. But you're about to give me one of these items grown either in your area or somewhere else, the packaging that you're talking about. How many different flavors? You had asked me, what flavor do I want? And I'm like, I don't know. But this is the Fiesta roasted crickets. How many flavors do you have?
So I have 6 flavors of the roasted crickets. So there's Fiesta, smoky barbecue, dill pickle, buffalo ranch, sea salt and pepper, and hot and spicy. So Fiesta is a very good choice. It's one of my best sellers. Tastes kind of like a Dorito.
Okay.
They'll taste like sunflower seeds.
Yeah.
It's all in your head.
So there's nothing, like I'm not cracking the cricket and kicking it out like a sunflower seed.
Correct.
Or you said more like a pumpkin seed. That's closer to what we're going to do. I asked you when we were setting the microphones, what'd you have for breakfast? And of course, everybody, I'm sure, always jokes, well, did you have it for breakfast? And the answer is
no.
Well, not today, but other days.
Other days I do. So the main way that I will eat them, I prefer the roasted crickets. I do energy bars as well, and then 100% cricket powder. The energy bars contain the 100% cricket powder. Those are for the people who are maybe not as brave as you that are, willing to go for
I'm going
the
all
full
in.
thing.
So this is it contains crickets. That's all that's in here.
It's crickets and then seasoning.
The seasoning.
Crickets, seasoning, olive oil, to bind the seasoning to the actual crickets. But yeah, I'm required to disclose that there's crickets in there, so I can't call them something different and, try and sneak them in there.
Yeah, now I see. It's the ingredients, and I was looking at the contains below. So this is something that people see at the farmer's market, and that just kind of started. So I guess, are we profitable yet?
We are not profitable yet. There was a lot of cash outlays last year in terms of infrastructure with the building of the Cricket Castle, purchasing the building in Collins to turn into my processing facility and all of that. Hopefully should be well on track to get there this year.
But you've had enough income to be able to invest in the business and not just, I have to limp along at a small until I can get profitable.
Right. It's been a combination of both. I've been limping along, but again, it's like any other agriculture. It takes some upfront investment to get going. And
is this the full-time job?
This is the full-time job.
So no more helping on the farm?
No more helping on the farm unless he's really desperate. But usually it doesn't get that far.
All right. I put it off long enough, so I just open and eat, right?
You just open and eat, and even for your efforts, I'll give you a cool sticker that says "I ate a cricket."
All right. Well, I have to eat it first, and it's got the Stay Fresh pack. And
it's like a Ziploc.
It is like a Ziploc, and
so you can save them for later.
Oh, okay. So I'm just going to pour them out, and that's quite an aggressive first handful, isn't it?
That's okay. I always say they're better by the handful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you'd never know.
No.
When you first had your first cricket. Mm-hmm. Yeah, these are just fine.
Sunflower seeds.
Yeah, they are. Did you have an apprehension when you were?
I did. Fun fact, I ordered my first live crickets before I'd ever eaten one.
Really?
Call it a leap of faith.
Wow.
Yeah, so I think I'd actually placed the order on Amazon before, I had ordered those live crickets. They just hadn't shown up yet. But yes, the first whole cricket that I was going to attempt to eat, I looked at it and I was like, I don't know if I can do this. But I said, you know what, though? If I'm going to try and convince other people to do it, I better do it.
You'll only eat the dead crickets?
Yes.
You won't eat the live one?
Would you go?
I wouldn't.
I was going to say, would you go take a bite out of a cow?
Well, see, there's some people when they look at a steak and they go, why'd you even make it medium?
Yeah.
I mean, rare is, anything past rare is dead,
Yes.
I mean, come on.
I suppose that's true. But
so is this, is this just a product I would eat just like I am, or would I mix this with something
So you
else?
could eat it just like that. I like to mix those into my eggs. Okay. They also go really well on top of a salad. Crickets are the new croutons. So there's lots of different options that you can do with it. I had one woman tell me a story about she would frequently come buy crickets from me at the Des Moines Farmers Market, and she said that her husband, would be like, I don't understand how you eat these every time she'd come home. And she said, but what I don't tell him is I grind them up and put them in his chicken salad. So there's many different things that you can do with these. They're very versatile.
Oh, they are. I just gotta. I ate a cricket.
You
That's
did?
really all it is. Do I get my sticker now?
You do get your sticker.
Okay.
There you go. It's a badge of honor.
It is a badge of honor. The what's best case scenario? What do you envision this being?
I think what I always tell people is I'd like to be the Tysons of crickets. The fully integrated, the processor, the all of it. Again, I think it's very important to know where my crickets are coming from and be in control of my supply chain that way. So I wouldn't be opposed to, eventually as I get that all built out, doing some sort of white labeling program for, like a Hy-Vee or somebody like that wanted to do their own cricket line. Mm-hmm. And then eventually maybe get the attention of one of the larger food companies and have an exit that way. That's the way I would hopefully see it going.
Well, at some point, you're not going to have to cold call Hy-Vee or Fairway or H-E-B or whatever the big conglomerate would be. They're going to likely come to you. Can you buy crickets at most Hy-Vees now?
No, you can't. So I have not seen, save maybe one place, crickets on the shelf anywhere, which is cool. It's a totally new market. You don't have a lot of competition. There will be more as we move forward.
And have you even thought about entertaining starting that conversation with Hy-Vee, just to say, hey, by the way, I've got this product. Eventually, I'm going to be big enough to supply your 7 states that you support, or however many there are.
Yes. So some of those conversations have already started.
So they're aware.
They're aware. Yep. And I suppose the really nice thing, the very first grocery store that I walked into was Wheatsfield in Ames, the co-op, and I dropped off a box of samples and said, get back to me, and not. Half an hour later, I had an email from one of the managers that said, yeah, we've had people asking for your product. Like, we think this is a good fit. And I was like, perfect. So anything like that's really an ideal situation. I know they're not all going to go that smoothly, but hopefully you're right. And hopefully they come knocking on my door. So
make it easier on that. All right. If I want to buy some, how do I do it? Because you are now online.
Yes. Yep. So you just go visit my website, www.gymaneatcrickets.com. So that's GYMNEAT crickets, all one word, no hyphens, no spaces. And you can order any of my products on there, and crickets can be shipped to your door as long as you're in the U.S.
In the U.S.?
Yes.
Yeah, you can't send it back to your friends back in Ireland
I've
yet?
had lots of requests, and they're all, chomping at the bit to get their hands on crickets. And I just say, guys, if you have a friend in the U.S., have them buy them and then figure it out from there. Yeah. So working on it.
Work around.
Yeah.
A workaround. All right, Shelby, I appreciate you coming in here. And this is niche agriculture as it gets. An idea to a product to expanding business plans. And has it met expectations?
Yes, and exceeded in many ways. And in other ways, I have to some days remind myself to stop and take a breather and see how far the last 12 months have brought me. It's just like any other business or farming or anything. Some days you can't see the forest through the trees just because you're so deep in it trying to, put out whatever's on fire that day. It's like any other agriculture. You make all these really extensive plans, spend a lot of time only to see them go up in smoke, and you have to figure it out. So there's a lot of that, but I would say in general, it has exceeded my expectations. So.
All right. Well, so has the food. That's really good. Dare to eat differently. Jiminy Crickets. Shelby Smith, thank you so much. That'll do it for this edition of the MTOM podcast. I am Paul Yeager. If you have any feedback for us, hit us up at market at Iowa PBS, or you can email me directly, paul.yeager, Yeager, @iowapbs.org. Any topic or any feedback you have, hit me up there. But thank you so very much for listening, and hopefully you were watching this. And if you weren't watching it, you'll have to go in and check and see if my reaction changes when I had that first bite of crickets. Thank you so very much for watching.